Hey everybody, Joe Diesel here. Welcome back to the Half Hour of Power. Oh, I see we have a caller up this time, and I don't think it's Jesse. I think Jesse has been kidnapped. Let's see.
It's rather appropriate that you call me a caller.
Oh, I recognize your voice, caller.
Yeah, caller.
Before.
That's why you called me through the whole episode a couple weeks ago. Never once did you ask for my name.
What? Are you sure about that?
I'm certain. Go back, listen to the episode. You called me caller through the whole thing.
Oh, whoa. All right, hey, hold on 1 second. I'm going to go back and listen to that episode. I'll be right back. Hold on, just hold on.
Yeah.
Whoa, you are right, caller. I did not ask for your name in that episode. I'm sorry. Is there anything I can do to make that up to you?
You know what you can do to make it up for me? Play the music again. I'm doing the intro of this episode.
You do what?
You heard me.
You want to do the intro?
I want to do the intro.
All right. Well, you know, if that'll make you happy and that will make amends for my blunder, my terrible, terrible blunder, then
I'm not certain about that, but it's definitely a start.
Okay. Well, at least you are giving me a chance to make up for that. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. I'm going to bring up the music. I won't talk. And when the music ends, you introduce the show and the topics. Does that sound good?
Sounds acceptable.
Okay, here we go.
Yes. Welcome to the Half Hour Power, and this week we are covering psychological horror, everyone.
All right, psychological horror. Hey, that sounds like a great topic. It being almost October, and October at the Half Hour Power is Horror Movie Month, and I just got jumping the gun here, and just so excited about Horror Movie Month. Just thought I'd start with sort of a general topic, but a fun topic. We go back and look at these lists. So, do you got any favorite psychological horror movies?
Well, oddly enough, I was just looking at the Wikipedia page for psychological horror, and it kind of shocked me at how many of these movies I've actually seen.
Yeah?
Because normally I'll look at a list that's like, oh, I've seen that movie, and then there's a bunch I haven't seen, and I'm going through, and wow, I've seen 80% of these. So, yeah, I like a lot of them. There's really great ones out there.
Would you, now some of these lists, I mean, some of these horror movie lists I look at like, well, that one doesn't really fit there, that doesn't fit there. Is there any on this list that you don't think fit there? Because I'm seeing a couple that I don't think fit into the psychological horror.
Well, in all honesty, there's a couple that might not quite fit, though there are some that I can definitely see fitting in a roundabout way. For instance, they mentioned Open Water, yet they didn't mention Thirst, Frozen, or any of those other man versus nature horror movies. But the whole idea is the horror comes from the characters having to deal with the inevitability of their own death. There's sharks in there, and in the other movies there's wolves or coyotes or whatever that are monsters, but the real horror comes from just the slow death that comes from a situation such as that. And as opposed to the, I guess, monsters, you could call them in this sense, they're just window dressing. But, you know, there are definitely some on here that probably wouldn't quite fit. But it's also kind of an inclusive term. There's lots of different things that would qualify as psychological horror.
The one in particular I'm looking at that I don't think should be on the list is Child's Play.
I would agree with you there.
I mean, Child's Play is on there, and I'm like, okay, I can see how you can put it on there because a little doll coming to kill you, you know. Yeah, it's psychological.
There's probably a lot of
but,
other doll movies that probably got lumped in with the other doll movies.
Yeah, because there's no movies that are just dolls are just jumping out at me if just looking at this list. Do you see any that I'm missing that are just dolls?
I could have sworn I saw a couple just because, well, dolls, they're scary. 'Cause I actually remember a field trip with the Cub Scouts I had as a child, and Child's Play was on that weekend when we were all staying in a hotel, and every single other person in my den watched the movie, and they were all really scared of it because they all had sisters with dolls.
Yeah. And since we're on the doll subject, the horror movie kicking off October of this year is a scary doll movie. You know what I'm talking about, right?
If I remember right, it fits in with the timeline of another recent movie where they're trying to actually do more expanded universe with some horror franchises. I remember that much. I want to call it out, but I'm
Annabelle.
Not. Yes,
it is Annabelle, and it is a spin-off of The Conjuring. It comes from the cases of Ed and Lorraine Warren, but I'm not that excited about the movie. I wasn't that excited about that trailer for Annabelle. What about you? Have you seen the trailer for Annabelle yet?
I have not seen the trailer for Annabelle yet. I've seen some banner ads, but haven't seen the trailer.
Yeah, I mean, I'll eventually watch it, just see how they do with it, but it just doesn't look like from the ads that they're going to do the real story from it. But anyway, let's get back to some of the older movies that have already come out and we've already seen. I'm looking at this list, and there's really not... I'm seeing a lot that I haven't seen that I've been meaning to watch. Like, there it is. I lost it again. I moved it. The Road's on there. I've not seen that yet. I'd like to. Have you seen that?
Let's see. The Road, I have not, no. I have, however, seen Repulsion.
Oh, how's that one?
It was quite good. I've seen several movies since then that, well, all other things considered, they should still cut Roman Polanski a check for it. Well, I'm trying to remember some of them. There was a movie called Love Object. It was basically a male version of Repulsion. And then another movie from the early 2000s was called May. And it's basically Napoleon Dynamite meets Frankenstein meets Repulsion. It's utterly strange, but it's a good movie. It's very difficult to watch.
Oh, I've not seen that one either. So this is good. We can bring up this topic and movies I haven't seen but meaning to see. But anyway, why don't we talk about a couple of our favorites? We were talking a little bit earlier. What's one of your favorites in this category, psychological horror?
One of my favorites is Jacob's Ladder. It's just
very good.
Yeah, it's a really excellent film that just does lots of things with. It just plays around with the periphery of your perception, where there's just all kinds of little things going on that you can't quite get a good look at, but you know that there's something strange about it. And then just as the story goes on, it builds and builds, and it gets weirder and weirder. And then finally, the one little thread comes in that ties everything together and makes it all make sense.
Yeah.
In general, that's really just what makes a good psychological horror movie, where you just have questions, then the one little thing that changes everything.
Yeah, that is true. I remember hearing about that movie, and I didn't see it when it came out. Did you get to see that in the theater?
I was a little young to see it when it came out. I saw the ads, but I've since seen it on TV and DVD and everywhere like that. It's quite a good movie, but yes.
Yeah, it is. It's got good replay value, doesn't it?
Yeah. as a lot of good psychological horror movies should, because the whole thing is, with psychological horror movies, you think one thing's going on all the way through the movie, and then at the end you often find that something completely different was going on, and then when you replay it, all of a sudden you're able to see all the interesting little things that they did to set up all the way through, and it just becomes a completely different movie at that point. Still highly enjoyable, but completely different.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Now, yeah, as we were talking, and I was talking to some other people about this topic, they kept bringing up Session 9. I kept thinking
Session
about
9
that.
is also an excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, that is absolutely. Now, that one has in it exactly what you described that makes it good. Now, just to step back just a little bit, what is Jacob's Ladder about?
Jacob's Ladder, it starts off with what seems like a flashback to the Vietnam War, where our lead character, Jacob, he's got some downtime with his fellow soldiers, and then just all of a sudden a crazy fight breaks out and everybody has to get their weapons and go into battle mode. And the movie keeps flashing back to this fight throughout several times throughout the movie, but then it also flashes forward ahead to, well, both back and forward to where you see scenes with Jacob and his first wife and his son, and then Jacob with his new girlfriend after he's divorced from his first wife, and after his son died in a tragic accident. And the whole thing is, as I stated, the time frame, it just keeps jumping around constantly, where you're with the first wife, you're with the second wife, or you're in Vietnam. You're with the second girlfriend, you're in Vietnam. In the future, you're in the past. Jacob just starts, in the present, Jacob starts seeing strange things here and there, where one of the first scenes you see in the beginning is a homeless person sleeping on the subway who appears to have a tail sticking out of the back, which appears, it may be a tail, it may be a male genitalia. You don't really know, because it's just strange looking. And then you just keep seeing strange things like that throughout the story, and Jacob just keeps trying to figure out how to solve the problem of why he's seeing all these strange things, and he winds up turning delirious a few times, nearly dying a few times, and he's just always on the quest for the answer. And then when it finally comes, it comes in just the most peaceful way possible that just completely takes you off guard, especially if you know what the original ending was supposed to be. But
yeah, absolutely. It's got a good cast, doesn't it?
Oh yeah.
I mean, how do you think Tim Robbins did? I like Tim Robbins.
Tim Robbins was excellent in it. And it was one of those, you can tell that's just one of those movies that actors love, where for the most part he's basically having to carry all of this on his own. Sometimes he has to do it without even much dialogue. It's just him on his own reacting to things. And a lot of it even comes in private moments where you're just seeing how he's reacting to all this darkness and strangeness that is enveloping him. But yeah, he put in an excellent performance, as did everyone else. Elizabeth Pena, Danny Aiello.
Yep.
It's just a really excellent piece of film, and oddly enough, Jacob's Ladder and Session 9, they're both notable for the fact that the video game franchise Silent Hill took a lot of their imagery from both of them. Specifically,
oh, that's right.
Yeah, if you see most of the monster design, especially in Silent Hill 3, it all has a very Jacob's Ladder. All the monsters have a very Jacob's Ladder feel to them, where they occasionally have things like tails and claws and misshapen things, but the whole idea is it's not necessarily a monster that's just created whole cloth that looks like it's supposed to be that way. It's a human body twisted into the shape of a monster, which is in some ways much more settling than just a monster.
Yeah, you got that right. And on that note, we are going to take a break here and give our sponsors some time. Psychological terror. The horror's not real. It's all in your head. It's all psychological terror. That's what they want you to believe. They want you to curl up into a little ball in the corner and rock yourself to sleep. They want you to tell yourself it's not real. Of course that's what they want. They are your enemies. And you need something to exact vengeance upon them for all the psychological terror they've inflicted upon you. That's right. It's your time to shine. It's your turn to torment your tormentors with some badass psychological terror. How, you ask? Well, who cares? It's all psychological. Psychological terror. Warning. Psychological terror can and will cause your brain to melt and seep out of your ears, nose, mouth, and eye sockets. Be warned. All right, we're back here, and whoa! How did that? Oh, let me get that out of there. I don't know what was going on with that. Maybe it has something to do with the topic this week: psychological horror movies. So we were talking about Jacob's Ladder a little bit. Now, that director, Adrian Lyne, he is probably best known for Fatal Attraction, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yeah. I think you
still there, Colin?
That would qualify, yes.
So, is that a psychological, would you think that might be a psychological horror movie also in certain ways?
I think it would classify as a psychological thriller, because a lot of the time horror tends to imply more overt, whereas Fatal Attraction, it's everything that happens in that movie could happen in real life, which makes it all the more terrifying. But it's just, it's the subtle twist of things that could have been innocuous coming something horrifying that makes it as interesting.
Yeah, as I'm looking at this list, and I mean, you talked about Open Water on this list. I wouldn't have Open Water on here as a psychological horror film either. But I was kind of surprised they didn't put Fatal Attraction on here since they included Open Water.
Yes.
But that's the way it goes sometimes with some of these lists. I mean, certainly somebody else will look at the list and think Insidious shouldn't be on here. But,
yeah.
Who knows? But let's talk a little bit
more
about
the second Silent Hill film
9.
probably shouldn't be on there either. Yes.
Oh, is that on there too?
Yeah, both Silent Hill films are. The first one definitely qualifies. The second one, it was basically classified by the people I saw it with as it's like Haunted House, the movie. Creepy hallway, jump scare. Creepy hallway, jump scare.
I did see the first Silent Hill. I haven't seen the second Silent Hill yet. Is that any good?
No, it's really, really not. First one is good if you can get past the fact that if you know about the continuity, they basically changed the character that would be so. The level of change they applied to one character in particular would be like if someone made a movie about a World War II movie where Hitler was working with the Allies and was called Champion of the Jews. That's how big of a change they made to the character.
Whoa, that's a big change right there. But let's get into Session 9 here. Now, Session 9, it was shot in a state. What was that? A mental hospital? Was it? It was Denver State.
It's one of the more
Hospital
famous ones. I've actually heard stories that Arkham Asylum was actually based on the asylum that they shot Session 9 in because it was really famous way before they shot Session 9 there.
Yeah, what was that? They actually shot in there, in
Yes.
the hospital. They shot the movie in there, and let's see, David Caruso, who's in it, as we all know and love David Caruso, right?
Yes.
He reports
and his
that
performance in this movie has been immortalized as an animated GIF that you can find online.
That's good to know. He notes that he saw. Let's see, he says he saw something there. Saw something pass his window when shooting outside the medical building. He didn't want to tell anybody because he thought they'd look at him funny. So, you get these reports of shooting some of these horror movies, some of these ghost movies. Some of their sets are haunted. So I guess some of that was he saw something happened. But let's see, here's the quote I wanted to get to, the little blurb. The film unit only shot a very small percentage of the building. Most of it was off limits because it was unsafe. But it's got a great atmosphere, this movie. It's really creepy. Wouldn't you say?
Definitely. Yes, definitely. And oddly enough, as I stated, the monster design from Jacob's Ladder made it into Silent Hill. The aesthetic of the actual buildings and the way light works, that's what Silent Hill took from Session 9, because there are a lot of just really creepy, quiet scenes where someone's just walking down a long hallway with only a flashlight or a lighter, and it's just really haunting. Like, even before you actually get to any of the bad things happening, just there's dozens of scenes in there where there's just so much darkness and tension that it's almost even more intense than the actual big reveals and the traditionally scary moments.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things that struck me about it. So, for anybody who hasn't seen Session 9, it's kind of an out of the way movie. Wasn't real popular when it was released, but it's since become a cult movie, I'd say. Would you say that?
Yeah, it's a big cult classic, definitely.
Yeah, so this came out in 2001, and let's see if I can pull up this here. It's a little brief synopsis here I found that read fairly well. So the Asbestos crew, they go win a bid to clean up an insane asylum. It's a rather straightforward job, but what happens is they find one of the people working finds a box with recordings in it, and he starts listening to it, and throughout the job he becomes enraveled in it. And it's a lady has, what's her name? Her name was Mary. She has multiple personalities, and the last one that we get to hear is Simon, that all the other personalities are afraid of. And the workers start disappearing and things like that. And
the interesting thing was that the personalities, during the session, she talks about the different personalities and says that, well, the girl, she lives in the tongue because she just can't ever stop talking. And Billy, he lives in the eyes because he watches but he never talks. And then finally, the last line of the movie, you hear where Simon lives. And it's probably one of the most horrifying moments in the movie.
Yeah.
And very fitting.
Oh yeah. Now, when they do the recordings, they did not flash to the girl talking, did they?
No, it's just the guy sitting in the room listening to the recordings. And
I think that adds to the creepiness of it.
Definitely. It's just all atmosphere, and in all honesty, the shots of him doing that, they could even almost be considered boring because he's just sitting there in front of the tape player, just popping tapes in, pulling them out, and just listening, and you're just hearing this long story that's slowly becoming horrifying. Starts out
Yeah,
nice,
so
calm,
he took quite
pleasant.
a gamble shooting it that way, Brad Anderson. He took quite a gamble doing that, didn't he? Because if it didn't work, the whole movie was going to fall flat.
Oh, definitely. And then there's a lot of other really interesting, subtle stuff in that movie, because Gordon, the owner of the asbestos cleanup company, he's in dire financial straits at the beginning of the movie, and he's basically promised to do far more work than anyone can ever actually do for far too little to actually make it profitable for himself, just because he's that desperate for money at this point. And you just see him get more and more on edge as the movie goes on, even as it hits the point where you think there's this silent stalker who's killing off the different members of his crew. Only to, since this is a psychological horror movie, you think one thing's going on, then you find out something very different is going on. And since I don't want to give any spoilers on this, there's one really beautiful use of a prop that sets that up. Gordon's phone. That's all I'm going to say about it.
Yes. And if you haven't seen that, if you haven't seen Jacob's Ladder, you need to see that too. But just wrap up session. I mean, it's got David Caruso in it, Peter Mullen, Paul Guilfoyle, Josh Lucas. It's got a good cast. I think the cast was really good. And director Brad Anderson, he also made The Machinist.
Oh,
have you seen that?
That is another excellent psychological horror movie with another one of those big twists that it just seems like it was set up perfectly all along, but it just leaves you scratching your head through the whole thing until you figure it out. And it's just another great example of just how far a guy like Christian Bale will go for his art. He went to the point of where for this movie, he nearly starved himself to death just to play a character who was supposed to be all skin and bones. And then later on, he got into the shape of a high-caliber athlete to play Batman just a few years later.
Yeah, Christopher Nolan was afraid the studio wasn't going to go for him because of the way he looked in The Machinist. They were afraid he wasn't going to be ready. So Session 9 is great. Psychological horror, there's a lot of good things to be discovered there. What is your final thoughts on that? We're coming very close to the end here.
My final thought is you never actually asked me for my name this time around.
Oh, are you sure? I didn't ask your name again. I did not ask you to introduce yourself.
My name's Landon, by the way. I'm Landon.
Okay. Wait. Just forget he said that because I didn't ask him that either. That doesn't count. So why don't you take this time to introduce yourself to the audience?
I'm Landon, and I like psychological horror, and I hope you do too.
Okay, Landon, thank you for calling in, and
thank you for having me.
I hope that I have made amends for my blunder on that, and that we will hear from you again.
Yes. Likewise.
Okay, great. All right, well, next week begins our horror movie month. This was just kind of the introduction, and we thought psychological horror was a good place to start there. So first one next week, we will be discussing the fine movie Chud. And we're looking forward to talking about Chud and some other fun things throughout the month of October. And we'll see you next time. And Landon, thanks for being on.
Thank you for having me.